Well, I had the pleasure of spending this Saturday afternoon here at the Minnesota History Center, which incidentally is one of my favorite places to visit here in St. Paul, working on a brand new painting showing the charge of the First Minnesota Regiment at Gettysburg. And this, of course, was partly in conjunction with the grand opening of this phenomenal new Civil War exhibit here at the History Center. You know, I can trace some of my childhood fascination with the Civil War and with Gettysburg in particular to a moment in time where my grandmother read McKinley Cantor's Gettysburg to me. This was a book intended for young readers, and I was still young enough that I couldn't make out a lot of the words, but I could sure understand the pictures in the book, and there were drawings of soldiers charging across the battlefield, soldiers firing cannons, and I needed to know more about that. And luckily she took the time to read the book to me, and I've been drawing and painting it ever since. In fact, I brought with me today an original drawing from when I was 12 years old. This shows my 12-year-old idea of what Pickett's charge must have looked like. And rather curiously enough, 33 years after I did this picture, I did a painting for a book that my dear wife wrote, B is for Battle Cry, a Civil War Alphabet. One of the paintings in that book is G is for Gettysburg, and it's the exact same moment of the battle. We're just on the opposite side. Lately, I've been reconnecting with my earlier childhood fascination with the charge of the First Minnesota Regiment at the Battle of Gettysburg. And so I have lately devised a plan whereby I will show, and you can see it behind me here, an image of the 1st Minnesota in its entirety charging into Wilcox's brigade during the second day of the battle. And I hope then to show the counterpoint to that, which is a close-up view of about 5 or 6 of these men, just as a way of contrasting the rather large bird's eye image with the very intensely personal close-up one. But this is a subject near and dear to my heart. I prefer painting pictures that have something to do with history and always have something to do with stories. And I really can't think of a much more compelling story than the charge of the 1st at Gettysburg. So I'm trying to fill a void. I want to be able to identify not only the 1st Minnesota, but also the major elements of their opposition, which was Wilcox's Alabama Brigade. And I'm hoping that this painting will put the charge of the 1st Minnesota literally in perspective. I want to be able to see the field behind them. We can see that the fields will be strewn with the bodies of the wounded and dead men, the fences that they've had to run over, the fields that they've had to run through, and the really broken up nature of the terrain that they had to charge into. And then, of course, covered all with a certain degree of smoke, which was continually written about after the event. So I'm hoping that the viewer will feel as though they've been lifted up into the air a few hundred feet and they're looking down into this very pivotal moment, not only in Civil War history, but Minnesota history, where this regiment is about to be almost shot out of existence. And as I say, I don't think it's ever been quite done this way before. Well, I'm very fortunate that my dear wife and I will be at Gettysburg during the anniversary this year. So I intend to be on the 2nd of July between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock p.m., the moment the charge took place, somewhere in close proximity to the monument, and I hope to have this finished painting, still a lot of work left to do, but this finished painting framed and with me. You know, it's safe to say that it's going to be a very emotional moment. I continually cry when I tell the story of some of the men who made that charge. I think I'll be honored to be there, and I hope that I'm somehow doing justice to the story of the men who went through this horrific moment.